Hello. The object of this session is to have some familiarity with the terminologies which we are using with Verus, and we see few very basic things which are needed to play poker. So here in this video we cover the following topics like ID creation, ID hierarchy, IDs in poker, data in ID, parsing IDs using bet APIs, and bet configuration. So let's jump into ID creation. So basically, IDs can hold the data in Verus chain, and it can also hold tokens. It can also IDs can also be used as addresses to hold the tokens. So right now, I have this chips test chain is created on Verus testnet. So these are aliases. So just I'm showing so that VC means virus grinder. Okay. So basically, if you look into these IDs, right, like let's say there is an ID named uh, poker dot chips 10 second. Okay, let's say this poker is a sub ID under the chips chain. Okay, and in this we'll see the basic important terminologies kind of a thing. The friendly name is nothing but ID name. Fully qualified name means up to the parent chain, and here the primary addresses means these are the addresses which are necessary uh, to make any updates to the ID. Let's say in order to spend some funds from the ID or in order to update some data to the ID, you need to sign with these addresses kind of a thing. And minimum signatures means like here I have two primary addresses are there. I need at least one signatures, just like multi signatures kind of a thing. So this ID address is nothing but all the IDs in the virus community. They have the specific address kind of a thing that we call it as VDXF ID. So if you see VDXFID ends with KVS, so this also the KVS kind of a thing. The parent of this thing is chips 10 sector. Uh, this system ID also this exactly I don't know. And the important thing is content multimap and the content map and content multimap. So this is the place where we store the data, and the data is stored in the key value pairs, which I'll cover in later in details. The other thing is revocation authority and recovery authority. So using these authorities, we can revoke an ID, and in order to update or maybe like these are the mostly. Let's say if you have a large pool of the IDs, maybe having an organized revocation and recovery authority will help you to recall any IDs if those corresponding addresses are leaked or something of that sort. Okay, and what is the status? It is active. Can spend fund means because this node contains the keys for these primary addresses. So then we can say can spend for, can sign for, and then block height. Block height means like the height at which this is created, and then transaction. The height at which the last update is made, I think, and the corresponding transaction ID. Okay, so this is the basic things about the ID, and we'll see like how we can create the ID. Okay, so we need two APIs to create an ID. One is register name commitment, the other one is register identity. Using the register name commitment, it is like you registering a name kind of a thing. Whatever the ID name is there, using which you can register the name, and using the register identity, you can create that ID on the chain. So we'll see some with some examples. Mm, let's say I have here the test poker ID is there. Let me see, it is already been there or not. Okay, this is already there. In order to see the balance in Verus, this is the get currency balance. Here star means all addresses. You can also give the specific address. Okay. So let's say we'll create some test poker one ID. Okay. So first I'll explain what is this register name commitment means. So the parameters for register name commitment is like name. Name is the name which we want to give it to the ID. Here in this, in our case, test poker one. Control address. Control address is nothing but the primary address which we see above. The So whatever the control address which you are giving here, you must process the private key for those address, because this address can be used to uh, make any updates to the ID, or even to transfer funds from the transfer the funds attached to this ID. And referral identity, here in our case it is not required. So in general, there is this feature in Verus that IDs can only be created based on the reference if you want to. But in our case, we make that as open, so anybody can create IDs who hold the some chips kind of a thing. Parent ID is master. So here we are creating this ID under the Polkadot chip stance. So basically, in ID hierarchy, we'll see like how the IDs are organized, and source of funds you can leave it blank. Okay. So if you do this thing, the name of the ID is there is a transaction which is associated with this name. So, but this doesn't actually register the ID onto the chain. So you can have any number of commitments. Let's say I can make one more register name commitment. So this is like a commit transaction for this ID. It doesn't signify anything unless you register this ID. Okay. So let's say I'll take in order to register identity, I need this information. So if you see the register identity, so the commit transaction information, whatever the output of this register name commitment, you paste it here, and then the ID name is test poker one. The primary address of this thing is same thing I'm giving. Whatever the primary address which you give in the register name commitment, use the same primary address. And minimum signatures is one, and private address. This I don't know what exactly this is. Yeah. So now we created the ID on the chain. So now we can see this ID. Okay, still the transaction is in mempool. So basically, if you see right, the transaction is in mempool, but if you pass -1 as parameter, it will also fetch the information which is in the mempool also. So if you see the mempool, the transaction is there, the ID information is already been created. So if you see the ID is test broker one, and the primary address of this ID is NI, and can spend for, okay, the corresponding private key is not there here. So this is the transaction is C7, and we see, yeah, transaction is C7. So the ID creation transaction. So basically, this is how you can create the IDs. We'll see. Okay, now the transaction is committed. Okay, yeah, now you can see can spend, so everything is there. Okay, the block height is the height at which this transaction is committed, it seems. Okay, so basically, the ID creation, it contains two steps. One is register name commitment, the other one is register identity. The register name commitment is nothing but you creating a commit transaction to a particular name. And register identity is the one which actually registers this specific identity onto the chain. And the second one is ID hierarchy. So the way the IDs are organized, like IDs can be organized in terms of IDs, sub IDs, like that. There is a multiple levels of nesting is there within the IDs. What that mean is that, like, let's say we have chips. Chips is the main chain kind of a thing. Okay, under chips we have the poker is the first level ID, or first level sub IDs, and test poker one is the second level IDs. So especially in bet, how we organize these IDs is, at first level, we have the IDs with the game names and with the player names. So, you can see more IDs like poker dot chips, chips, and bet dot chips, blackjack dot chips. So like this, we can have these IDs at the first level, and also the usernames. Like anybody, let's say I create an ID with SG dot chips, or like some XYZ dot chips. So like that, you can have the names at the first level, and at the second level, in bet we usually create the game specific IDs. Let's say I have, for in the context of the poker, there is dealers will be there. So I have an ID named dealers under poker, right? So there is some ID named dealers under poker. So like this way, we organize the IDs. Okay. It's good to know the IDs. So if you see chips, under chips, there are like poker, bet, and some player names. These are the first level IDs. Under poker, we have the game specific IDs: dealers, cashiers, dealer names, table names. All these are the under poker. So yeah, and then IDs in poker. So in the bet ecosystem, we need to know at least, you need to know about few very basic ID names. These ID names are very fixed kind of a thing. Let's say there is an ID name dealers is there. So of course you don't need to know about this ID name, but they are, but this is very standard ID which contains information about the dealers. Let's say here that there is ID name dealers is there. The content multimap of this ID contains the list of the dealers available in the list of the active dealers available in the bet ecosystem right now. Okay, so all the IDs which we store in the bet, it will be stored in the key value base. So this is the key and this is the value of that specific key. Okay, we will see later like how we encode this data and then how we can decode the data. So at this moment, what you have to know is like, in the context of the bet ecosystem, there are specific IDs, standardized like dealers, cashiers. These are the IDs which you need to know, and also like you also need to know the specific table name which you want to join, the specific dealer name which you want to join. So those things we cover in the data in ID. We'll cover in a separate topic, and how we can pass the data in the APIs. This we see here. Let's say there is this dealers is there. Okay. Let's say you don't know any IDs about the bet. Okay. So there is, I provided some minimum APIs here, like list dealers is there. Okay. So if we do list dealers, it will give what are the list of the active dealers which are available. So what this API is basically parse dealers ID and then display this information for us. And likewise, there are list tables. Okay. So the list table contains information about the dealer and then what are the tables which are hosting by this dealer and what is the current configuration of this table. So like this, it is there. So why this information is needed means we'll look into the config kind of a thing. So here, if you see, if you are if you remember playing the poker with world setup, this is the world setup configuration. So we'll tell what is the type of the IP, and then we'll configure the IP address, and then we'll give the web links from which you can connect to the backend of this node from the UI. So this is the world configure. So I can actually remove these files. And the new config files starts with the Verus. Okay. So for the player, look into the details of like Verus player.ini. Okay. Okay, this is the config file for the in order to play poker. Here you need to make the configurations. So here that what you need to make config is like dealer ID means to which dealer the player willing to join and table ID. A dealer can host multiple table. So if there is any specific table under the dealer which the player is willing to join, okay. And if you don't know these names, you can just leave it blank. So what at the moment what the bet logic will do is like it will check what are the list of the available dealers and players are available. It will take the first available table under a first available dealer, and then let the player to join that specific table. But anyway, I shown you these commands, right? Like list dealers will give you the list of the dealers, and list tables will give you the list of the tables available. So using which you can join, and then the primary address. So this address is the address. To this address, you need to own the private key. So what actually this address is like? When you join the table, what the dealer will do? The dealer will add this primary address to the specific table ID. So what that means is that during the game, you can make an updates to the table ID because the dealer is already added this address to the table. So make sure that you own the private key for this specific address. But the duration for this address is only till to the game time. It doesn't have any meaning associated after once the game is done. Wallet address. So the address from which you need to spend the funds during the game. Okay. If you know the specific address, you can give that address. Else, you can give default star kind of thing. Okay. So the configuration of the bet is very simple. Like you need to know the dealer ID and then you need to know the table ID. Okay. And you have these APIs like list dealers and list tables from which you know this information. Okay. And the good thing with Verus is like let's say let's say SG 777 underscore D. This is the table is available. Okay. We'll see we can parse the table like I given this print id is the command using which you can parse any not any id, the ids which we are using in the beta, because the data for each id is very different. The way we encode the data is different for each id. So what we'll do, like let's say SG777, this is the table id. So after giving the id name, you mention the table type. ID name is this thing and then type. Here the type is table. Okay. So it will give information about like what actually be current status of the table. If you look into this thing, the table, the number of players to join this table is 2, and then this is the player 1 information, and this is the player 1 shuffled cards, and this is the player 2 information, this is the player 2 shuffled cards, and then If you see TD deck, TD peon deck, it means like the player one blinded deck, the player two blinded deck, and then this is dealer's blinded deck. So and then what the current game state, this thing. So earlier we don't have any facility for us to reconnect kind of a thing. Let's say if I'm a dealer, let's say because the dealer is already been disconnected, but the dealer can join. Sorry, the dealer can join easily now because let's say if we say pet DCV, it is showing deck shuffling by dealer is done. If you see into the table TD deck, so the dealer shuffling part is done. So since all the information is available in the IDs, it is very easy to handle the player disconnections, and we no need to store any information locally. So this is one good thing with the Verus. So let's refresh what are the topics we covered. So ID creation we covered. There are two APIs which we need to be aware of: register name commitment and register identity, and ID hierarchy. So in BET, how we organize the IDs. So there is this chips, the main chain, under which at first level we have the game names as the IDs, and also the players can create any IDs. I mean, this is the logical classification of it. I mean, poker bet and some player name, and here since anybody can create any ID, players can create any number of IDs. And there is one important thing that Mike mentioned is like since we the ID creation is open to anybody, the people can even create some very standard names like let's say there is some game name like some football or some cricket, some game name is there, so people can create those game names as the IDs, and then they in the future if they want they can even trade those IDs also, like the way we are trading the domain names, right? Like which you can register some common popular ID names, and then in the later, if somebody wants that ID, you can even have this trading also, like this thing. So, anyways, we have this poker is there. Under poker, these are the game specific IDs are there, and then IDs in poker. So same thing. Like you need to aware of the dealers contains a list of the dealers information, and using the list dealers information, you will see what are those dealers, and using list tables, you see the entire tables which are available in the bet ecosystem. And data in IDs. So the data is organized as a key value pairs. We'll see in detail like in dealers what data we are storing, in player ID what data we are storing, in table ID what data we are storing. So I'll cover very detailed in the separate video. And parsing IDs using bet APIs. So there are very basically the print ID is the API, and then this name is the ID name, the type. So the dealer and table. The dealers means for the dealer's ID. Dealer is like for any dealer ID, and table means for any table ID. So basically, of course, there are some other IDs are also there, cashiers and other IDs. But those things, a player no need to know of those information. And bit configuration. So the configuration as I show in the config file. So it is very simple thing. You just need to know to which dealer you want to join, and if there is any specific table you like to join in this dealer, mention that specific table, and also the primary address to which you own the keys, because this address is added to the a specific table ID which the player is going to join, and to that ID the game information, the game info, like the way we see right now here. If you see the player one info, this information is updated by the player one, and I also show. Let's say there are two players are there, right, for this table, and if you see here, and if you see the primary address, if you see the primary address, these are the addresses. Like if you see x2, right? X2 is nothing but here. If you see in the config, So the address ends with x2. Okay, if you see that address is added to the this table's primary address. So because so that is the reason you need to own the private key for this address. So this information is very valid only till to the game. Once the game is done, the dealer will flush out these primary addresses from the table, and they can add the new players' addresses in the future. So hopefully you have, hopefully it is clear. I think. Okay. Let's say if there are 10 players are there, so literally the primary address contains list of those 10 players addresses along with this is the dealer owned private address. And minimum signatures is one just because during the game, let's say if the player make any bet kind of a thing. So what the player has to do, whatever that move is there, that move is to be updated with the with this table kind of a thing. So so I think yeah, this is about the configuration and this is the valid address. So the configuration is very simple. So yeah, I'll end this video at this point, and if there is any questions or any topics more clear, if you want to know, let me know, and I'll try to cover very detailed into the separate videos. So initially, my what I'm thinking like I'll do a series of videos just explaining what we are doing and then where we are there, and some info about the very basic stuff, so that like it gives some idea about the terminologies and all those things. Once if you are clear about these terminologies, and it is easy to configure and I mean, if you play the earlier versions of better, this is much easier to play. That's one thing I can tell you, because you no need to have any headache about having the static IPs, all these things. So this is very smooth with this virus. So yeah, if there is any questions or anything, let me know, so that like I'll try to cover them in detail. Yeah, thank you.